Chapter 12, James and His Fight Against the Illuminati. Let's backtrack. Back in the 1970s and early 1980s, I had the opportunity to meet with some high adept Satanists and to learn something of their beliefs. At that time, I was naive about how dangerous and powerful they were. Eventually, a friend named James would awaken me to the threat that these high adept Satanists represent. When I was young, I knew a number of people who were involved in something that was known to me as the Society of Lucifer. I suppose to be accurate, I would have to say that the Society of Lucifer was not exactly the same thing as the Illuminati. The Bavarian Illuminati was created in 1776, and it is a secret society that lords over other secret societies. I don't think that it's all powerful, and I don't believe it has complete control over all other secret societies, but it is the most powerful of secret societies, and its name has come to be used to describe all secret societies. This is sort of how the word yakuza is used to describe all organized crime in Japan. In fact, the police and those who are actually in Japanese crime organizations don't use the word yakuza the way the public does. So somebody actually in Japanese organized crime would probably not describe himself as being in the yakuza. The same phenomenon applies to the word Illuminati. It has become common for persons who are not in a secret society to use the word Illuminati to describe all Luciferian secret societies. However, those who actually are in secret societies tend to only use the word Illuminati to describe a certain group or network of groups. So when I was young, the Satanists I knew preferred to use the phrase Society of Lucifer. The Society of Lucifer was the loose affiliation of Luciferian secret societies which existed before and after the founding of the Illuminati. The intention of the Bavarian Illuminati was to unify these secret societies into a single group with the goal of taking over the world. When I was very young, back in the 60s and 70s, not all of these secret societies had yet been absorbed into the Illuminati. And not all of these secret societies were satanic. Some were really more like a form of heretical Christianity. My friend James in the Resistance grew up in such a Christian secret society. He was not satanic at all. He was a Christian, but he was aware of the Bavarian Illuminati and considered himself to be its enemy. James was involved in helping victims of satanic ritual abuse, such as myself. He also helped disillusioned Illuminati members safely leave the cult. The Illuminati doesn't allow its members to quit, so James would help deserting Illuminati members create new identities and move to places where they wouldn't be found. This was a kind of underground railroad for escaping Illuminati members. There was a type of resistance movement within the Illuminati back in those days, and it was more interested in reforming the Illuminati rather than destroying it. However, James believed that the Illuminati system needed to be completely deconstructed. I should make clear what is meant by deconstruction. To deconstruct the Illuminati is not the same thing as destroying the institutions which make up the Illuminati, and it certainly does not involve killing Illuminati members. The idea of deconstruction is to systematically and continually weaken the institutions which make up the Illuminati system. Some of these institutions are the Bilderberg Group, the Federal Reserve, the United Nations, the Trilateral Commission, NATO, the Financial District of London, Council on Foreign Relations, the IMF, and other globalist groups. This would not be a violent revolution. This deconstruction would come about as the result of an information war. The public is to be so completely educated on the nature of how the Illuminati achieves its power that it can't be tricked or fooled anymore. So, for example, the United Nations might still exist as an institution, but its powers would be greatly limited. It would have no right to a UN army, and its leader would no longer be allowed to perform child sacrifices in the meditation room. Deconstruction would also come about by providing appropriate therapy, and deprogramming for Illuminati members, all of whom are so brainwashed that they are insane to varying degrees. Violent revolution sounds easy, but it rarely works. Deconstruction is a slow and difficult process, but it could avoid unnecessary violence. Therefore, I am not a revolutionary, I am a deconstructionist. And the best way to deconstruct the global plutocracy of the Illuminati is to reconstruct democracy on a national level. The reason that some Illuminati members may cooperate with this is that in any process of deconstruction, amnesty will become possible. Those who assist in this deconstruction in important ways may be forgiven for the crimes they've committed. Of course, such an idea displeases those who want revenge. Those who want violent revolution often talk of revenge, but I believe that Christ was right when he spoke of the power of forgiveness. James believed that the foundation for effectively resisting the Illuminati is spiritual. He believed that this is a spiritual war first and foremost, and that it is an economic political war secondly. So James was always encouraging people to renounce Satan and to worship the one true God, creator of all things. Personally, I don't believe that you have to be a Christian in order to have a spiritual awakening. And in some cases, Christian indoctrination may inhibit spiritual awakening. A person may have a spiritual awakening through some type of non-religious experience. In my case, my spiritual awakening involved James, who was a Christian, and Christianity is my personal path of awakening. So it was that years ago, on the day after I had met with the High Adept Satanist named Sid, James contacted me. He had heard of my meeting with Sid through one of his many sources. James and I had known each other for a number of years before my meeting with Sid. And although at that time I didn't really identify myself as a Christian, I did sometimes go to Christian churches. So from time to time, James had encouraged me to become more involved with Christianity. But on that particular day, James was especially concerned. James found me the day after my meeting with Sid, and we took a walk together in the woods. James asked me what I thought of Sid, and I replied he seemed like a likable man, and that although he was a Satanist, I wasn't convinced that he was all that evil. I said that I had felt tempted by Sid's offer to work with him. James glared at me with a shocked expression. He said that Sid was a satanic high adept who had the ability to manipulate people's minds with hypnosis and psychic influencing. James felt that Sid had psychically tampered with my mind. James asked me to pray with him. We prayed together, and I felt as if a veil of delusion was lifted from me. I suddenly felt afraid. I realized that some part of me had instinctively felt afraid of Sid, but that I hadn't consciously acknowledged this. James explained that although Sid was not the type of Satanist who used sex magic or blood rituals in his practice of ceremonial rituals, he could command demons, and these demons had the power to bring about violence in the world. James explained that Sid was known to have commanded demons to kill his Christian parents in an accident so that he could inherit their wealth. He was known to have used demonic influences and psychic manipulation to get his Masonic friends to assist in his career and business. James explained how high adept Satanists take anything decent and twist it around to make it into something sick, and that's what Sid had done with his twisted version of Buddhism. Although Sid was very polite and kindly in his personal dealings with people, he was actually filled with evil intentions. Not only did he let his demons do his dirty work, he was part of a group of wealthy investors who profited from the American military-industrial complex. They had used their political influence to create the war in Vietnam and to profit from it. So it turned out that Sid was not really the compassionate Buddha that he had pretended to be. James made it clear that I had been in the presence of the most dangerous and powerful Satanist I would ever be likely to meet. I had protested against the war in Vietnam. I knew that the political reasoning behind the war had been irrational. I felt badly that our nation had been torn apart by this needless war. I had known men who served there and heard their stories of the insane violence of war and the corruption within the military. I also understood that many Vietnamese had needlessly suffered. That day when I prayed to the Creator with James, I suddenly experienced a panoramic vision in which I saw the entire war in Vietnam as massive satanic blood ritual, bombs dropping, villages burning, and bloodied children running in panic from the explosions. Such images filled my mind's eye. The blood rituals which I had seen as a child at the hands of abusive Satanists were small by comparison. Sid and his business partners were performing a satanic blood ritual remotely and on a titanic scale. I couldn't believe that I had ever felt kindly toward him or that I had even considered working for him. After that day, my relationship with James changed. I turned to him for guidance and understanding. I came to know that he and some of his followers had authentic psychic abilities. Many times I witnessed demonstrations of their abilities. By comparison, my own psychic abilities were unimpressive, but James encouraged me to develop my own talents as best I could. He taught me techniques of psychic shielding so that I could not be remotely manipulated by Sid's psychic powers. He encouraged me to pray more often and to study spiritual writings. I never met with Sid again or anyone else connected to him. Eventually, I drifted away from having anything to do with anyone involved in Satanism. I had no way of contacting James or any of his followers, but James always seemed to know how to find me when he wanted to, and he would appear in my life at moments of crisis. Over time, I was eventually able to heal myself from the emotional trauma of satanic ritual abuse. James encouraged my involvement in Christianity. I had been put off by Christianity when I was young. I felt that my Sunday school teachers were narrow-minded and judgmental. But with study, I gained a more expansive view of Christianity. I learned to discern the difference between the religious dogma of the church and an authentic, natural spirituality which had nothing to do with indoctrination. When I was young, I had heard Satanists talking about how Luciferianism would soon conquer the entire world. At that time, this seemed to be very unlikely. I knew that there was a cult of Satanism among the super wealthy. I knew that many political persons were connected to Luciferian secret societies, but I couldn't see how that would translate into a complete takeover of the world. However, as I became older, I came to understand how economics and politics really work. I came to see that it was possible for a small group of people to deceive and manipulate a much larger group of people. I came to understand how an entire society could become trapped in a matrix of propaganda which was created by a small group of aristocrats. I ultimately came to the realization that the Satanists' plan for complete global domination was realistic and that in some sense it had already taken place. When I was young, I had decided to avoid talking openly about what I knew of Satanism. I learned from experience that if I even tried to approach the subject, people would either laugh it off or become freaked out. But as the decades rolled by, I became more involved with persons who were politically aware. Many of them felt puzzled about how the world had become so corrupt. I came to realize that what I had experienced when I was young was an important part of the puzzle, so I found my voice. When the 9/11 false flag operation took place, it was an obvious turning point in the Illuminati's plan to take over the world. Their strategy for world domination requires them to remain completely invisible until the time when all resistance is futile. I came to realize that if we could remove the Illuminati's cloak of invisibility in the eyes of the public, it might be possible to undermine their plans. I had heard other people on the internet talking about the Illuminati, and I realized that things had changed. I realized that it might be possible to talk about my experiences with Satanism in some open way. After a meeting with James and some of his followers one day, I decided to take the risk of publicly talking about what I knew of Satanism. I started talking on KOPN on the radio show Thought Crime Radio. I helped produce shows and I co-hosted shows. I brought up the subject of Satanism and the Illuminati as often as I could. I also brought up subjects like transhumanism and the government's UFO cover-ups. Eventually, a co-host that I was working with became very uncomfortable with what I was doing. I think she really couldn't deal with her fear of a possible Illuminati reprisal. Once you start to awaken to the fact that these violent Satanists are real, it's tempting to want to distance oneself from anyone who's talking about the Illuminati. Some people at the radio station were clearly uncomfortable with what I was doing. The shows that I produced were actually very popular. Sometimes we'd get so many listeners calling in that we couldn't get them all on the air. But the discomfort of others at the station for what I was doing eventually got me pushed off the air. The show became tamed by the fears of the people at the station, and although the Thought Crime Radio show still exists, it has become much less controversial. After I left the radio show, I continued to post on the website, thoughtcrimeradio.net. Shortly after I left the air, I was contacted by James. He told me that he and his followers had been listening to the shows and were impressed by what I was doing. He asked if I would work with him on a project. I told him that I wasn't on the air anymore, and he said that this was too bad, but even with just the website postings, there was something we could do which might help things. I agreed to work with him in any way he wanted. He said that he had become aware of a group of people in the Illuminati who had become disillusioned with the organization. The Illuminati likes to recruit idealistic, well-educated persons. When they join up, they are told that the goal of the Illuminati is to create a utopian world government. They are often not initially aware of the deception, violence, and cruelty of the Illuminati. When they get into the cult, they either become adapted to all of this, or in some cases, they try to resist. James had found some Illuminati members who had become disillusioned and were trying to figure out how to resist their leaders. He said that these people could give me insider information which I could put on the website. I explained that our website didn't really get very many hits. But James explained that this was a matter of quality versus quantity. What interested him was the quality of the people who were looking at the website. He explained that persons in the Illuminati itself were looking at it. He said that many of the people who visited thoughtcrimeradio.net were persons researching and resisting the Illuminati. So we would be reaching those persons that James most wanted to target with these revelations. Some of these readers of this website were loyal to the Illuminati, but some of them wanted to resist their leaders. Nevertheless, in either case, this was an opportunity to create a public discussion in which we would openly communicate with the secretive Illuminati. And some people who know nothing about the Illuminati would look at this online discussion and become awakened. James had the idea that doing this could serve several purposes. James is always looking to help Satanists renounce Satan and turn back to God. Also, the Illuminati is a cult which brainwashes its members in different ways. This could be an opportunity to deprogram some of the Illuminati's vital members. One thing that reinforces cultism is its secrecy. If you start to put those secrets out into the light of day, this shifts the cult's members' perspective on what they are doing. They begin to become more objective in their thinking. They begin to see themselves in a new way. And in doing this, their mind control sometimes becomes deprogrammed. James said that if we could put insider information out to the public, some members of the public might believe it and become more aware of the Illuminati agenda. But even if most of the people reading the postings didn't believe what they were reading, that wouldn't matter because the Illuminati members would know that these things were true. Having their secrets put out into the light of day where anyone could see them would embarrass the Illuminati leadership, and this would force them to think about what they were doing in a new way. James explained the protocols for making meetings with this group of people who would be feeding me this insider information. They were concerned about security. He described them as reformed technocrats and disillusioned transhumanists. These people knew a great deal about computers and science. They had once believed in the idea of a scientific world government. Many of them were atheists, but they had come to realize that if unchecked, the present generation of Illuminati leaders were going to destroy the world. These people who wanted to feed me insider information called themselves by a peculiar name of the Disciples of Deus.